Welcome to fourth grade history. This is lesson 161. We're looking at pages 234 to 236 at the comprehension check. We're almost to the end, guys. And so just a heads up for you guys. I want you to write this down somewhere, okay? Your final test will be, and it's scheduled for next Thursday. So not this Thursday, but next Thursday, okay? So 1 week from tomorrow, and hopefully you're on track with everything. So 1 week from tomorrow, according to the video I'm making today, and it's over chapters 16 through 18, okay? And there's also, you're gonna need to know the president, or not, I'm sorry, the states and capitals, okay? So before we get into what you are reading today and a little bit of review, we're gonna say our states and capitals, all right? So 254 and 255 are the pages if you need them. We'll say them together. Montgomery, Alabama, Juneau, Alaska, Phoenix, Arizona, Little Rock, Arkansas, Sacramento, California, Denver, Colorado, Hartford, Connecticut, Dover, Delaware, Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Honolulu, Hawaii, Boise, Idaho, Springfield, Illinois, Indianapolis, Indiana, Des Moines, Iowa, Topeka, Kansas, Frankfort, Kentucky, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Augusta, Maine, Annapolis, Maryland, Boston, Massachusetts, Lansing, Michigan, St. Paul, Minnesota, Jackson, Mississippi, Jefferson City, Missouri, Helena, Montana, Lincoln, Nebraska, Carson City, Nevada, Concord, New Hampshire, Trenton, New Jersey, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albany, New York, Raleigh, North Carolina, Bismarck, North Dakota, Columbus, Ohio, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Salem, Oregon, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Providence, Rhode Island, Columbia, South Carolina, Pierre, South Dakota, Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, Montpelier, Vermont, Richmond, Virginia, Olympia, Washington, Charleston, West Virginia, Madison, Wisconsin, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. Very good. All right, so you will need to know those dates and capitals for the final, as well as all the information in chapter 16 to 18. Now, the best way to study for this is to, well, first of all, use the videos that I'll be making for the review videos. Use those, watch those, try to answer the questions before I give the answer. That's the goal there, is to see if you know the answer before me. And then that will help you know, okay, that one I'm not sure on. I need to study that more. I need to look at that again. The other way is to to go to the chapter checkups and ask yourself the questions and to see if you know the answer. You can do the same thing with comprehension checks, those short checks throughout the chapter. But the other thing is any of the bold terms in the reading, and you can go through and highlight if you haven't already, but highlight the bold terms, but then also highlight why it's important, okay? So some of those things, they might be underlined next to it, or it might not be underlined, but it might have a bold term and then give you a definition for it, what it was, or what that person was famous for, or the date, why that was an important date. Because with history, people, places, and dates are very, very important. And so I will be doing some videos. That you do have a couple of quizzes before you take that final test, so those should help you be ready for that. So today we are looking at the worst terrorist attack the United States has ever experienced. Occurred during George W. Bush's first year as president. On September 11th, 2001, or 9/11, as it is remembered, terrorists hijacked several passenger airliners. They used two of the hijacked airplanes to attack the World Trade Center in New York and another to hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. A fourth plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. Approximately 3,000 people died in these attacks, both from the planes and on the ground or in the buildings. And it was devastating. I remember that morning. it was awful. And I think what scared me the most was that we didn't know if there was going to be more. Um, we didn't know if they were targeting other places in the US, and where it would strike. And so the fear of what's happening next, I think, was the biggest for me. And so I was in sixth grade at the time, and it just shook me as a about 12 years old. And I know I cried. It was awful. It was the most terrified I think I had been, of something like that. Now, I've had other incidences where I was terrified of something, but it wasn't quite the same. And so that feeling is hard to describe, that not knowing what was going to happen next. And I think we may feel a little bit of that right now with this pandemic, because we don't know what's going to happen next, who it's going to affect next, whether it's going to be someone that we are close to, or someone that we don't even know. But the unknown, I think, is scarier for a lot of people than what we would know as as something that, when you realize that something is going to happen, but the like what kind of effects can come from it, then it's scary, but it's not as scary as not knowing what's coming. And I think that's what had a lot of Americans in fear over this. But President Bush gave these words as he talked to the people. And during a time of crisis, the president has always given some sort of speech to the American people. And I know that President Trump has given his fair share of speeches since this has started, but that's something that a president, that's kind of like that's part of their job, is to try to reassure the people that it's not being overlooked, that they're doing something about it. Whether we agree with all the decisions that are made or not is entirely a different matter. But knowing that a president is taking action towards something is usually comforting. And so one of the things that he said, and that's been remembered, is that freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. At that point, we didn't know who had attacked us, but it was discovered that Osama bin Laden, who was a radical terrorist, and leader in Al-Qaeda, they were responsible for these hijackings. They took responsibility. They said, we did it. They wanted the recognition. They wanted people to know that they had done it, because they wanted, I think they wanted to put fear into our lives. And as a Christian, the Bible says that fear doesn't come from God. And we've talked about this some, but just remembering that God doesn't give us the spirit of fear. He gives us a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind to make the right decisions, to take a step back from that and not fear, but trust him, to say, okay, this has gone wrong. What do we need to do to fix it? And sometimes you can't really do anything but trust God, but really, God is in control. So we shouldn't be looking at that and saying, well, all we can do is trust God. That should be our first response, is to trust him, and then wait on his timing. And so, we declared a war on terror, on these terrorists, and the first target was the Taliban. It was a strict Islamic group in Afghanistan, and they had been known to work with Al-Qaeda. And so we went in, and hundreds of terrorists were killed. captured and killed, but Osama bin Laden escaped. He was still in hiding, and we weren't able to catch him there. So next we went back, turned our attention back to Iraq, where Saddam Hussein was still in charge, still the dictator there. And so we had still suspected that he had those chemical weapons. And when President Bush told him basically that he needed to allow the international authorities to come in and inspect the weapons, he didn't cooperate. And so we started our next war, Operation Iraqi Freedom. And that was really to take Saddam Hussein out of office and to set up a free government for Iraq. That was our goal with that. And so in less than a year, we were able to do that. We took him, he was a prisoner, and so we set up their government, and for the first time in over 50 years, they held their first free election. And so that was pretty special for them. And but there were still some attacks, and they called them insurgents. They're rebels basically that didn't agree with they still sided with Saddam Hussein, and so they would fight against the Iraqi soldiers, or the Iraqi people and the American soldiers that were there. But they were still able to hold the free election, and their new government was able to put Saddam Hussein on trial, and they sentenced him to death for his crimes. And so they were able to take care of that threat and that cruel dictator. And so we were able to help them, and it also helped our security too, because we had a government there in the middle of these other countries that were terrorists or communists, that were able to stand and have a stable government. And so, but during this time, it wasn't the only thing that was an issue. We also had several hurricanes, some natural disasters that hit our some of our outlying states. So Florida actually, and the Gulf Coast, got hit by 4 different hurricanes in 2004. And then in 2005, we had Hurricane Katrina, which was the costliest storm that we have faced. That it hit on the shores of 3 different states. It really devastated New Orleans. And it was, there were people that were taken, so there about 1,300 people died in that they estimate, but a lot of homes were lost. And so, you know, they would take those who they were able to get out, and they'd send them on buses to different states. And so some people that had absolutely nothing ended up in another state and tried to set up a new home. And some people have lost like all their family. They tried to keep families together. Families were together, and there were some that would wait because they thought, well, maybe my family will show up with the next group that gets brought in. But there were some awful things that happened with that. It was a lot of loss there. And so we've seen that, and in more recent, we've seen some islands that have gotten really bad hurricanes, and so it's definitely a threat near the ocean for those hurricanes, and it's not something that people take lightly. A hurricane warning or hurricane watch is definitely taken seriously by most of the people. And so, all right, I'm going to ask you a couple questions pertaining to what we read last time. What country did Iraq invade in 1990? Kuwait. Kuwait. Who was the president that sent the U.S. military to help Kuwait? George Bush. So that was senior, the first one. What was the shortest war our nation has ever fought? Operation Desert Storm. Okay, very good. Who was the leader of Iraq? Saddam Hussein. All right. And then just a couple questions. Who was behind the terrorist attacks on 9/11? Osama bin Laden. And who was the president during that time? George W. Bush. And what was the war that tried to free Iraq? Operation Iraqi Freedom. Okay. I'll leave it there and you can answer the comprehension check there on page 236. And tomorrow we'll be looking at the rest of 236 and doing a couple other things. And then Friday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday will all be step review videos. And I'll let you know which ones go where, because I have a couple of them I'll do like the combined like I've done before. So I'll let you know which ones to watch for which days, and hopefully get you ready for that test on Thursday. You can also review with a parent or an older sibling, preferably someone that can read to help you out, because it'll be easier if they can ask a question smoothly. So reading helps. But all right, I will let you read that and answer that comprehension check on paper, and then we will see you in the next lesson.